Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kelsey De Rinaldis, and I'm an Assistant Cultural Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. I'm delighted to be joined by House of Representatives member Kanako Otsuji, Marriage for All Japan Representative Director Makiko TERAHARA, and Goldman Sachs Head of Prime Services Masakazu YANAGISAWA. And of course, my colleague, U.S. Consulate General in Okinawa's Public Affairs Officer, Richard Roberts, who will moderate today's event. June is LGBTQI plus Pride Month in the United States. It is a time when Americans celebrate the LGBTQI community, as well as commemorate the 1969 Stonewall Uprising, the event that sparked the modern LGBTQI rights movement in the United States. The U.S. Embassy is hosting today's program to demonstrate that all are included and to underscore that we all have a role to play in advancing LGBTQI plus rights together in both the United States and Japan. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that today's event is on the record and will be recorded. There will be English and Japanese simultaneous interpretation. Captioning for today's program is available through the UD Talk app or in your web browser directly. Instructions for connecting were sent prior to today's event and can also be found in the chat box. Following the opening remarks and presentations, we will open up the session for question and answers. We invite you to submit your questions throughout the session in the Q&A box. You can submit questions anonymously. Additionally, during today's program, we will be conducting audience polling. We encourage you to participate, and it will also be completely anonymous. So now, I would like to invite you all to engage in some audience polling questions. This helps us to better understand who is in our audience with us today and your thoughts on today's topic. The polling question should pop up on your screen now. Again, your answers are anonymous, so we encourage you to participate. We will give you a few moments to answer. As you can see, there are two questions. The first question is, what is the first priority in advancing LGBTQI plus rights in Japan? And the second question is, how can the US and Japan work together to advance LGBTQI plus rights? So again, we'll give you a few moments to answer those questions. All right, answers are coming in. Thank you, everyone. A few more moments here. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share the results with everyone. Great. So it looks like the top priority from the audience here is removing cultural bias and stigmas under political leadership. So I believe we'll talk about that today. But it looks like there are quite a few other responses as well. Legalizing marriage equality for same-sex couples and amending residence, parental, or social service provisions as well. All right, and for the second question, How can our two countries work together? It looks like increasing exchange opportunities for policymakers and business leaders to deepen their understanding of these rights, as well, of course, to advocate in international fora and to promote LGBTQ plus rights as equal rights, human rights in the media as well. So wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your opinions with us. We will touch on all those topics today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator for today's program, my colleague, Richard Roberts. Richard is the Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Consulate General in Naha, Okinawa. He joined the Department of State in 2006 and has served in embassies in Nigeria, Japan, South Korea, Mongolia. After earning his doctorate at the University of Memphis, he taught psychology in Europe and Asia with the University of Maryland University College. So with that, Richard, over to you.
Hi, everybody. It's really great to be here. It's really just a fantastic opportunity. I'm really looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you, Kelsey, for the introduction. Before we get started, or as we get started, I'd like to have each of the panelists take a moment to introduce themselves very briefly so that you can get to know them now. And I'd like to start with Kanako Otsuji-San. Would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Hi. Yes, hello everyone. I am Kanako Otsuji, a member of the House of Representatives. I am joining you here from Osaka. I am looking forward to this panel discussion in the last week of the Pride Month in June.
Great, thank you very much. And perhaps next, maybe Makiko TERAHARA-san, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Good morning, everyone. I am TERAHARA. I am a lawyer. At 5 locations in Japan, we have equal right for marriage or marriage for all, a lawsuit. And I am the joint representative of the defense team of this lawsuit. And I'm a representative director of Marriage for All Japan, which is a group to promote the equal rights for LGBTQI plus people.
Great, thank you very much, TERAHARA-san. And then last, but of course not least, Masakazu YANAGISAWA-san, would you like to say hello to the group?
Thank you, Richard. I'm from Goldman Sachs. I'm head of Prime Services Japan. My name is Masakazu YANAGISAWA. Very nice to meet you all. And I'm very honored to be able to join this panel with all other distinguished guests. I'd like to present a different perspective in the panel. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Yanagisawa-san. I think, as you can see, it's really going to be an interesting day. We have really 3 amazing people who are all experts in the field. And the work that they are doing, it's really helping us achieve advances in LGBTQI plus issues, political issues, legal issues, societal issues. These people are all helping to move things forward. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from them, learning about what they're doing and their suggestions for what we can do to keep this kind of progress going. But underneath everything that we're going to talk about today, I would like to point out that in addition to the information that we'll be sharing and in addition to the strategy and the decisions we'll be talking about, is a basic affirmation of who we are. And sometimes in our struggle to move forward, sometimes we move forward and sometimes we move backward. But our right to be should never be in question. And sometimes as LGBTQI plus individuals, sometimes our very existence is called into question. When decisions are made, it feels sometimes as if people are saying that we don't exist or we are not valued. And I would like to just make sure that everyone understands that underneath all that we're talking about is a basic affirmation of who we are. And I'm reminded of this today in the New York Times. there was an article that was talking about a Supreme Court decision yesterday in which a student in Virginia, his name is Gavin Grimm, and Gavin is transgendered, and he wanted to use the boys' restroom at school, and he was denied that. And so he sued the school in order to have the right to use his bathroom of choice. And the lower court in Virginia upheld his right to use the bathroom of his choice. And the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. That's good news. When the Supreme Court refuses to hear a case like that, it means that what the lower court decided will stay. And so Gavin, he's no longer in high school, but he earned the right to use the bathroom of his choice. But I'd like to read to you what he said in his statement today. And he said, "I am glad that my years-long fight to have my school see me for who I am is over." I think that's very powerful, because he's not only is this a decision about his ability to use the bathroom of his choice, but to be seen for who you are. And that's so important. And that affirmation of being seen as who you are, I think, is just really kind of fundamental. And when people don't feel like they're being seen for who they are, it can lead to feelings of loneliness or depression, anxiety, and unfortunately even suicide, which is still a huge issue for LGBTQI plus individuals in our society today. And so I know that this affirmation, it needs to come from within, from ourselves, but it's very important that we have it from others as well. And I would like to just tell you a story about that in my life. And when I was working in Mongolia at the U.S. Embassy, I was going to participate in the LGBTQ Pride march that was being held there. And it was a small organization. Only 25 people actually ended up in this march in Mongolia. But as we were preparing for the march, we found out that people were going to be protesting, and there was a fear that things could turn somewhat violent. And because I'm a diplomat and I'm at the embassy, I had to go to my security officer, and I said to the security officer, "I need to let you know that there has been some discussion that, you know, we're going to do this march, but it could be that there would be protesters, and it could be that it might turn a little bit violent. And so I need to let you know." And as the security officer at the embassy, he is responsible for my safety. And so he is able to say, "I don't want you to go and do this," right? He's able to do that. But what he said to me was, and I'll never forget it, he said, "You know, it might be a little bit dangerous for you to go to this event, and we will make sure that the police are there to make sure that nothing happens." But he said, "I think it would be more dangerous if you don't go. Because if you don't go, what we're saying to people is that these rights and these values, being seen for who you are, is not as important to us as other things might be." I felt so affirmed by that. I felt so, you know, I always kind of knew who I was, but for it to be affirmed by him by saying to me, "Who you are matters so much, and we really believe in this with you," that was really powerful for me. And so that's really kind of my point today. And I just want to close on that as we move to hear the presentations from everyone else. I know that some people in the audience that are listening in are participating today. You know, we have a lot of students, we have a lot of people at different points in coming to terms with who you are and trying to be seen for who you are. And I just want to say that all of us on the panel today, all of us at the U.S. Embassy, we all support your right to be seen for who you are. So thank you very much for that. So with that, let me turn it over to our first speaker, Kanako Otsuji-San, and I'm really excited to hear your presentation. So take it away, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for hosting the panel discussion today. I'd like to say thanks to the staff of U.S. Embassy. I am joining you from Osaka today. So one of the reasons why I'm here as a panelist is because I am a lesbian member of the House of Representatives. So from the legislation perspective, I would like to talk about this topic. So U.S. Embassy is organizing this event today. In Osaka, in Kobe and Osaka, there's a consulate of the U.S. and the office has made great contribution to visualizing the rights of LGBTQI plus people. Since 2009, Mr. Patrick Rihan, who has already gone back to the US, is gay, and together with his husband, Emerson, he has made great contribution to visualizing the rights of LGBTQI plus people, and he was a wonderful role model. So I first wanted to introduce him. So I think I have 10 minutes for my presentation, so I will try to keep time. First of all, I have a presentation material with me, so I'm going to share the PowerPoint material as I talk to you today. So this is my screen, and let me start a screen show. I apologize, that's the end of my presentation. So now let me begin my presentation. Once again, I want to introduce myself. So I think this might remind you of what happened back in 2005. In August 2005, there was a lesbian and gay parade in Tokyo. It's now a pride parade. In the movement for minority people, we started this parade, but back then, we were still calling this parade Tokyo Lesbian and Gay Parade. This was the opening ceremony, and I was the youngest member of the Osaka Prefectural Assembly without any association with a political party, and I publicly came out that I would be participating in this parade as a lesbian. And I also wrote a book on coming out. So why, as a politician, did I visualize this right and come out? Well, originally, I started thinking that I may be a lesbian when I was a high school student, but I was unable to face myself squarely. There was no accurate information, and it was difficult for me to connect with people like me. And then in university, I started using the internet back in 2000 or late 1990s. And finally, we were able to use the internet to find friends and allies in Japan. And I started meeting with these people. And then we were talking to each other saying that why do we have to hide ourselves? And in the daily life, we hide our own gender identity. And only when we are with allies, we were able to show ourselves, true selves. And we had this double life. And it's not a matter of the presence of these LGBTQI plus people, but it is an issue of the society that had the bias against LGBTQI plus people. So what can politics do to change the society? I started to be interested in that, and then I became a Diet member internship. So I went to a city assembly member and became an intern. The society will have to be changed through the actions and wills of the people who want to change the society. I was an intern to a assembly member, and this member was discussing with the education board of the city on the minority children with LGBTQIs. And I thought that that would change the society. And I read a book by Harvey Milk, who is a gay author. So Harvey Milk has challenged himself in elections again and again, and he achieved changes in the society. And I thought that I could do the same in Japan, which is also a democratic country. So in 2007, I ran for the House of Councillors election, but then I didn't win the election then, but 5 months later, I became a member of the councillors. And afterwards, I also successfully became a House of Representatives member. So when I came out in 2005, publicly announcing his or her sexual orientation, what does it mean? The media and members of the press were wondering how to cover that news. But now in local governments and central government, no matter which political parties, they are questioned how to address this LGBTQI plus issue. Back in 2018, on December 5th, the LGBTQI plus discrimination law bill was submitted. The first time it was submitted, there was an election for the House of Representatives, so we had to resubmit the bill again afterwards. The Diet is the only legislature, which means that that's where the laws are made. So only Diet members can make laws. So how can we materialize this law? That is a big challenge to address. And going to the next slide. On June 3rd, 2019, the Civil Law Revision Bill was also submitted. This is called Marriage Equality Bill. In the Japanese Diet, for the first time, same-sex marriage-related bill was submitted. TERAHARA-san will be speaking later, but the LGBTQI plus people are fighting in the court. And before fighting in the court, in the legislature, if 2/3 of the Diet members agree with this bill, then the same-sex marriage will be legal. So we want to make this bill into a law as soon as possible. In June, since the end of May, the 204th Diet session started, and LGBTQI plus a promotion of understanding law was discussed. The Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Tokyo Games are approaching, and it has the concept of diversity and harmony. All the athletes will come to Japan from around the world, and we have to eliminate any discrimination. And if we want to achieve that, we need the law. In Japan, there's no law that talks about sexual orientation. We do have a law to change the gender of people who have disorders related to sexual orientation, but that's the only law in Japan. So we do believe that we have to change the legal laws and legislations in Japan. I am a member of a bipartisan parliamentary league, and this law will talk about this law will not be talking about any specific cases of discriminations or penalties. So the LGBT promotion of understanding law is just a law on principle, but unfortunately, it was opposed by conservative members of Liberal Democratic Party, and it was not submitted to the Diet. Some LDP members also said discriminatory remarks, and it is not acceptable in the year 2021. It's very regrettable. But in the justice system, there was an epoch-making decision made in the court in Sapporo District Court in March this year. But at the same time, in the Diet, we are also making movement and taking action. So I think that the legislature is also positively impacting the justice and legal court. And I think that in the US, a lot of actions were taken which mounted to the Pride Month. So I think that if we are to achieve similar results in Japan, then we need to change the power or the ruling party here in Japan. So now I want to talk about the US. Harvey Milk has written an autobiography and it is available in Japan. It influenced me quite a lot. I participated in the Department of State program in 2006, and I went around different cities in the US. It was a positive influence to me. Kami Goldwyn from Wisconsin, she is a role model as a fellow lesbian politician. She says that she can make a future with hope, full of hope, with our own hands. She delivered a wonderful speech, and family with LGBTQI plus children were also coming to many parades and events. We are divided by the Pacific, but still we are neighboring countries, and we have the same value of democracy. So Japan and the US. Well, in the US, back in 2015, same-sex marriage became legal, and in Taiwan 2019. So Japan must become a next. So to change the politics, I want to have a lot of discussion with other panelists. That is all from my side. I apologize, I went over the allocated time, but I want to discuss with all of you to change the politics in Japan. Thank you.
Otsuji-san, thank you very much. Your personal story is very inspiring, and your perseverance and your just never giving up on this, it really inspires me. It gives me a lot of hope. So thank you very much for your presentation. And I know we'll have some really interesting questions for you later on in the panel. Then let's turn things now to Makiko TERAHARA-san. If you would, we'd love to hear your presentation.
Hello. I cannot turn on my video. Oh, okay. I'm TERAHARA. I would like to have my presentation shared. Thank you very much. So I would like to talk about the current status and the future of marriage equality in Japan. Next slide, please. So just briefly, let me introduce myself. So I myself is a heterosexual person, and when I got married, I didn't really think too deeply about the meaning of the marriage. But since around 10 years ago, I started to work for the right protection of the sexual minority people. And same-sex marriage is not allowed, while opposite-sex marriage is allowed. And that is, of course, a right problem that same-sex marriage couples cannot enjoy the same benefit, but the country or the state itself does not recognize same-sex marriage, meaning that they are not worthy of being protected, and this is promoting discrimination. So that's what I thought. So the fact that the same-sex marriage is not recognized, it's not because of them. So it's because of the indifference on the part of the sexual majority, including myself, promoting discrimination. That is why we are responsible as sexual majority to change this situation. That's why I am the representative of the legal team and heading a campaign, because I believe that the sexual majority side needs to change. So I would like to give you an update on the lawsuit. Sapporo, Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, Fukuoka, we filed the suit, and not recognizing same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. That is a claim. For the first time, we filed such a law case. And on March 17th this year, for the first time, Sapporo District Court gave a ruling on the same-sex marriage. And the plaintiff's claim is twofold. One is freedom to marry for all, and that is not granted to same-sex couples under the Article 24 of Paragraph 1. And another one is equality under the law needs to be guaranteed, but under this law, same-sex couples are being discriminated against. And the ruling of the Sapporo District Court said in the ruling, not recognizing same-sex marriage does not violate Article 24 and Article 13, but it does violate Article 14, Paragraph 1. This is Article 24, Paragraph 1, which says marriage shall be based only on the mutual consent of both sexes, and this guarantees freedom to marry for all. And the Sapporo District Court ruling said that homosexuality was considered mental disorder at the time when the Constitution was formulated, and the use of the wording both sexes. Given that this article stipulates matters concerning opposite-sex marriage and not same-sex marriage, that is why not recognizing same-sex marriage cannot be said to violate Article 24. This is a regrettable part of the ruling. However, Article 24 does not go so far as to deny granting of legal protection to same-sex partners. So, the Sapporo District Court said the Constitution does not prohibit same-sex marriage. That means constitutional amendment is not necessary to recognize same-sex marriage. We just need to change law. So this is Article 14, Paragraph 1. This says all of the people are equal under the law and there shall be no discrimination. So this is the principle of equality. So as an assumption, the state, that is the defendant, claims that there is not a differential treatment, as even a homosexual person can marry an opposite-sex person. And this is unbelievable what the state says. And they say, therefore, there is no differential treatment based on sexual orientation. But such marriage will be devoid of the substance of marriage, therefore cannot be considered a marriage anticipated by the Article 24, and Sapporo District Court continues to say that same-sex couples cannot enjoy legal effect that arise from the marriage. Therefore, this constitutes a differential treatment based on sexual orientation. And sexual orientation is the nature of a person determined not by a will or choice. As such, this can be considered something comparable to sex and race. So whether there is a rational ground to have a differential treatment based on something that cannot be chosen or changed by a will of the person should be considered carefully, whether there is a differential treatment because of truly unavoidable reason or not. So that's what the Sapporo District Court said. And whether this strict criteria is met or not, the Sapporo District Court considered the purpose and substance of marriage. And as for the purpose of marriage, the state, that is the defendant, said that the marriage is for granting legal protection to a couple to raise children. That's why marriage is only for opposite sex couples. But then the district court said, regardless of the existence of children or not, the couple's life together itself should be protected through marriage. And that is, of course, a very natural matter, of course. And same-sex couples can also live together in a way that is accompanied with the substance of marriage. So that is also a part of the ruling of the district court. So also the district court took a look at the citizens' awareness and social change. For instance, partnership registration system being expanded, and also the majority of the people think same-sex marriage should be recognized, and also the number of companies formulating basic policy on LGBT has increased, and also foreign chambers of commerce demanding recognition of same-sex marriage. And this really moved me a lot. The district court says that unless there is an understanding and acceptance by the majority, that is heterosexual citizens, the same-sex marriage should not be granted. That is not the case. And even if protecting same-sex couples may change Japan's traditional view of the family in any way, but compared to opposite-sex couples, the lack of protection of same-sex couples is too much, as they did not choose to be homosexual persons. And there are people who have negative views and values about same-sex marriage, and that is no small part of the society, but that should not be taken as the reason why not to recognize same-sex marriage. And the only difference between opposite-sex couples and same-sex couples is their sexual orientation. And sexual orientation cannot be chosen or changed by a will. And therefore, there is no reason to allow difference in value of the benefit that can be enjoyed through legal effect arising from marriage between opposite-sex couples and same-sex couples, and the benefit should be equally enjoyed by both opposite-sex couples and same-sex couples. So the partnership registration systems, these are the systems which are still short in terms of protection of same-sex couples. And family registration that gives the recognition of the person, that is a very important aspect. And the legal effect granting outside of the system called marriage does not grant enough social recognition to the people. So that is a kind of a ruling of the Sapporo District Court. And that is why right now the current situation goes against Article 14 of paragraph 1. That is the ruling of the Sapporo District Court. And this is a really sincere ruling, I believe. So this is the timeline going forward. Right now it's only Sapporo, but other district courts are going to come up with their own rulings as well. And whichever lose goes to make an appeal. Therefore, I think the final ruling will be handed down by the Supreme Court, and I assume that that timing will be around 2023. However, Article 99 says ministers of state, members of the Diet, judges, and all other public officials have the obligation to respect and uphold this constitution. So the ministers, as well as the members of the Diet, they are responsible for upholding the constitution. And this Sapporo district, the ruling said the current situation is unconstitutional, meaning that the Diet does not have to wait for the ruling of the Supreme Court. They have to act now. So Marriage for All Japan, which I represent, in order to have the earliest possible recognition of same-sex marriage, we have 3 types of activities. We have full support of the lawsuit, lobbying to lawmakers, and also awareness of the general public. We have what is called Marry for Diet, and we invite Diet members to have discussions on recognition of same-sex marriage. And as we have those meetings, we are seeing more and more Diet members coming, not just from opposition parties, but also from the Liberal Democratic Party as well as from Komeito Party. And also Business for Marriage Equality. This campaign has started among businesses, and the number of such companies is increasing. It's over 160 right now. So these are the issues and challenges going forward. We need to approach the elderly part of the population, and also we need to also approach indifferent people regardless of their age. We have this event organized by the embassy, American embassy, and this is a very good opportunity to talk about same-sex marriage. We can listen to stories of the people. We would like to work together with you going forward as well. Thank you very much. And finally, I would like to introduce this to end my presentation. This is one of the plaintiffs of this lawsuit, Mr. Sato Ikuo, Ikuo Sato. And January 18th, he actually passed away because of the brain hemorrhage. But then in the court, he said, recognizing same-sex marriage means changing society in ways that future generations do not have to feel the self-denial that I felt when I was young. And I would like to pass away before. I will probably pass away before you do, and when I do, I would like to do so, holding my partner's hand as spouses and say thank you. You had a happy life, and depart. But then before he passed away, recognition of same-sex marriage did not come around, which is really regrettable. At this point in time, as we speak, there are people who are struggling because of the not recognizing same-sex marriage. Whether you get married or not, that right should be guaranteed equally, regardless of your sexual orientation. But this is a really symbolic discrimination against sexual minority, not recognizing same-sex marriage. And in order to fundamentally change this discriminatory situation against the sexual minority, we need to have the same-sex marriage recognized. Thank you very much.
Oh, TERAHARA-san, thank you so much for that presentation. And I'm really very moved by the compassion and the empathy that you showed. I mean, it really, the fact that you recognized indifference and then you looked at that and you said, you know, this is really not right. And I would like to say to everyone, you know, LGBTQI plus allies for us are so important, because the message that you can convey is a message, you know, when an ally talks about marriage equality for all, and how marriage equality is a struggle for all members of society and how it improves all society, that message is really heard. You know, sometimes as a gay man, if I talk about that, people say, well, of course you want that, right? But when you talk about it and do it like that, it's so powerful. And so really, to all of the LGBTQI plus allies that are out there and participating today, really your contribution for the equality for everyone is really powerful, and thank you very much for that. So let me now turn it over to our final speaker, YANAGISAWA-san. Would you like to make your presentation?
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in this event. My name is Masakazu Yanagisawa from Goldman Sachs. It is a wonderful opportunity, so I'd like to say thanks to U.S. Embassy as well as the members of the audience for this opportunity. Today, I'm going to make a presentation from the business sector's perspective on LGBTQI+, especially on the freedom of marriage. So related to the topic presented by Ms. Terahara, I'd like to share with you how the business sector considers this matter. So please share my slide.
はい、では2ページ目お願いいたし
Please go to the second page.
ます。先ほど寺原さんの方からも
Earlier, Terahara-san also mentioned this. In Sapporo District Court, there was an epoch-making ruling made. So on this matter, there was a ruling by the district court in Sapporo. And I contributed an article to Nikkei newspaper on this ruling. So why is business sector paying attention to the same-sex marriage passing into law? That was the title of my article. So now I work for Goldman Sachs, which is an American company. And why is this company talking about the freedom of marriage and LGBTQI+? There's actually an origin. Back in 2012, the then CEO of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, back then in the United States, there was a lawsuit on same-sex marriage, and he advocated for the same-sex marriage in the US. Fortune 500 represents 500 major companies in the US, and Goldman Sachs was the very first company out of Fortune 500 to advocate for same-sex marriage. So that announcement made a swell in movement, and we were able to visualize the support to the lawsuit. So it was a great impact. So in our company, we want our voices to be heard in Japan as well. This is one example. Goldman Sachs has a YouTube channel, and on this channel, we talked about the current situation surrounding LGBTQI+ people in Japan, as well as the lawsuits. The Human Resources Department head and the legal division head discussed this matter. And here you can see that 10,000 people viewed this video, but actually, as of last week, 260,000 people have already viewed the video, and we want to make a big movement in Japan too. On Nikkei Asia, the English version of Nikkei newspaper also covered this matter, but the current CEO of Goldman Sachs is also encouraging us to start up these movements in Japan. So around the ruling of the Sapporo District Court was made, the CEO made that statement. So why is the business sector supporting such movement on same-sex marriage? There are three reasons. First is about human resources. Japan is the only country in G7 who do not grant legal status to same-sex partners. So same-sex partner to a Japanese spouse cannot have a visa issued for this reason, which is reducing the human resource competitiveness in Japan. This survey is an excerpt from the economic and the business case for marriage equality in Japan. And there was a survey on those LGBTQI members of the companies, and those people chose countries that are friendly to LGBTQI plus people as the destinations for expatriation, and only 2% of people, respondents, chose Japan. So Japan is having a disadvantage. Next, please. The second reason is cost. The benefit of the companies is given to human resources. For example, in our company, we are providing benefit to all the employees, regardless of the sexual orientation or gender identity. But the systems given by the country do not recognize same-sex partners. So those costs that are supposed to be covered by the administration are actually covered by enterprises. This table is as of 2014. An insurance company in the US has conducted a survey, and based on that, you can see that there are costs that have to be covered by employers because of inconsistent marriage laws. You can see the lines for small, medium, and large companies. And as these movements are advanced, people are wondering if these burdens should be covered by private sectors. If these burdens are not placed on the private companies, then these budgets should be able to be used on R&D or other benefits. So that is exactly what's happening in Japan. And the third reason, this is the last reason, the specified non-profit organization, Nijiro Diversity, said that 60% of LGBTQI plus people have experienced negative behaviors and actions in the workplace on social orientation, sexual orientation, and gender identity. And because of that, employees are suffering from mental illness and other challenges. The social security must be advanced in order to reduce negative actions and behaviors. And if we can do that, then the creativity and productivity can be enhanced. And it will also cater to the economic growth. So these are the backgrounds, including ACCJ and other Chamber of Commerce. Many organizations are calling for the legalization of same-sex marriage. And in order to promote same-sex marriage in Japan, there are petitions going on by nonprofit organizations. So around 300 companies have stated their support. I am a gay employee of a private company. I came out, but when I joined the company, I had not come out, and I was in the closet. But there was a moment when I realized that I couldn't be hiding in the closet anymore. I had subordinates, I had a big team, and I talked about work-life balance to the team members. And when one of the subordinates came to me about how to strike a good work-life balance, I was unable to give clear answers without coming out. And I thought that it would be difficult to be a member of the leadership without coming out. So I came out, and in the workplace, I am surrounded by my colleagues, and I have been leading a very fulfilling life. So I talked about 3 benefits, economic benefits and incentives to private companies to promote same-sex marriage. Same-sex marriage and the rights of LGBTQI people is the human rights issue. So what's important is for people to live as they are, and that is the very first reason to promote same-sex marriage. But it is also important for Japanese economy and Japanese companies. So economic incentives should also be given attention. That is all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yanagisawa-san. I think that is such a powerful argument. You know, marriage equality and you know, full equality in society. It's right because it's right, but it's also good for business. You know, it's good for the bottom line. It helps companies. You know, for all of the reasons that you gave, and study after study has shown that in the United States. You know that. These kinds of equalities, these kinds of things, actually just, it helps companies and it helps the employees in the company. So I would kind of hope that people would want to have that because it's the right thing for people. But, you know, sometimes we're motivated by other concerns. And so when a company says, this is really good for your bottom line, that's a very powerful argument too. So thank you very much for that. And thank you also for talking about your personal coming out story as well. I think that's important to hear for people because there's a set of videos in the United States. It Gets Better. Are you familiar with It Gets Better from Dan Savage, right? And I think that those are very powerful because, you know, what Dan Savage is having many people showing is that coming out, being yourself, being an authentic person, it's hard. It's not easy at all, but it does get better, and you just have to kind of hang in there. So thank you very much, Yanagisawa-san, for that. So I think now it's time for the Q&A part. So I think we've got some really great questions that are coming in. So let me take the first question, and maybe I'll address this question for you, TERAHARA-san. Would that be okay? Here's the question that one of the people wrote in. In Japan, even in heterosexual marriage, gender issues always occur when it comes to divorce, especially when couples have children. It seems that we don't have basic social norms and systems to respect individual rights, including same-sex marriage. What, in your opinion, would be the key to making institutional changes together with awareness and social norms? That's a very complicated question, but would you like to maybe tackle that?
Well, thank you very much for that. Yes, that's true that this month, on the 23rd of June, I am also the representative of a legal team, which is about the people using their own surname even after the marriage. But the Supreme Court ruled that the current situation is not unconstitutional, which is a very unfortunate ruling. I think it's only Japan where a couple cannot continue to use their surname even after their marriage, and the situation has not changed. And I think it could be because of the same root with this same-sex marriage problem. If you look at the opinion poll, the majority actually support using their own surname even after the marriage. However, the judge of the Supreme Court or the ruling party people, those main people at their diet, they do not understand what the majority of the people think. So what we have to do is, going forward, we have to appeal to these people and raise awareness, change their mindset. We have to do that step by step. And one way of doing that is to file a lawsuit. That's why I resort to that. And of course, without having a lawsuit, if the equal right can be realized, that's great. But I think raising awareness is very important. And some people say that with the lack of understanding, the law should not be changed. It's too early to change the law. But then actually both are necessary. And if the law is changed, I think people's awareness also change.
Yanagisawa-san or Otsuji-san, would you like to add anything to that?
Terahara-san gave a very good response already. Then from my side, so I do have the same understanding of the issue as Terahara-san. So those who live in Japan, in terms of awareness, majority of people are already agreeing to same-sex marriage. So only a minority people, of Japanese people oppose to same-sex marriage, but the legal system and laws are too old-fashioned and they are not aligned to the understanding of people. So the politics have to be changed. And for example, in the House of Representatives, female diet members only account for less than 10%. So when it comes to the selective surname options for married people, the people don't really understand the disadvantage of not being able to choose his or her own surnames. So the politics have to be changed. Young people believe that a same-sex marriage should be accepted. So each of the votes, I believe, will change the politics, and the politicians will have to give out that message. So should we change the politics first or awareness first? It's a chicken or egg argument. So the politicians will have to drive the change of the society. That is the role of politicians. So I believe that politics should drive that change forward. That is all from my side.
Great, thank you very much. We've got another question and it relates to work. So maybe we can start with Yanagisawa-san on this one. The question is, I think that many people in Japanese workplaces have mental health problems, but not just LGBTQ. Gig work, temporary positions, and unpaid work at home are presumed to be even more serious. In other words, isn't it an issue for the entire working environment? So maybe all of our panelists can address that, but let's start with you, Yanagisawa-san.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So in the question, the person is asking that there may be some more serious issues. But in my workplace, we are addressing mental health issues, and we do have a slightly different understanding. There are different factors and issues, and LGBTQ is one of them, and long working hours is another factor. So we are looking at each of these factors, and there is no more serious or less serious factor. That is our idea. So in other words, we believe that there are many factors. That's why the issue is becoming more compound and more complex, and it is becoming more difficult to resolve. So from this perspective, we believe that we have to look at each of the factors thoroughly, and LGBTQ issue will also have to be resolved. Otherwise, in the end, other issues will not be resolved either. So I heard a case about a woman who was struggling with some trouble in the workplace. This woman was working for a different company, and I was listening to the case, and they were saying that the woman was suffering from an economic difficulty. And then this woman was lesbian, and she had a female partner, and they were both not working as permanent employees, and as a result, they were experiencing economic difficulty. So as we looked deeper into the case, we realized that at a glance, we were only looking at the superficial issue of this person. So we have to look at the complexity of the issue. And when we do so, we cannot ignore the LGBTQ problem. Otherwise, we cannot resolve the issue.
Great, thank you very much. Would Otsuji-san or TERAHARA-san, would you like anything to add to this?
May I first? Okay. So I will be brief. So yeah, I totally agree with what Yanagisawa-san has said. And it's not just the labor environment, but also the educational setting and elsewhere. We have a lot of problems, and it's not just in Japan. But in order to address such complex issues, and I mean, they can't be solved overnight. We have to work on that step by step. Because I'm a lawyer, I get a lot of legal consultations, and those problems are quite diverse. And I try and address each aspect, each factor. And it can be an individual issue, it can be a social issue. But in any case, you can't address everything at once. We need to involve experts and communities that are relevant, and also lawmakers. We need to work together with all of these stakeholders, and we have to always go step by step. So just because there are a lot of problems, so we can't kind of neglect some of those issues. Priority is important. Yes, I agree with both speakers. So, but how to prioritize those issues, I think depends on the position you have or the situation you are in. And I think there is a solution to each problem. For instance, long working hours, karoshi, it's already an English term. And I think we need to have interval way of work, but that's not recognized or obliged here in Japan. We have the upper limit or the cap, but then we do not have any obligation for interval. And also sexual harassment and also power harassment also encompasses LGBTQI, but there is no legal kind of banning of the power harassment. And 60% of the women work as irregular workers. Many of them lost their job against the backdrop of the pandemic. So we need to have kind of inclusive legal framework. So we have to make sure that just a part of the society is being protected. We need to have inclusive legislative approach to include everyone, to protect everyone.
Great, thank you very much. And Otsuji-san, maybe let's stay with you because we have a question that relates directly to the legislature. The question is, what kind of legislative actions are planned in the National Diet and local councils in order to have a meaningful anti-discrimination law with strong enforcement provisions, as such is common in the United States? Merely passing a bill seeking to promote understanding won't do any good beyond being symbolic or a feel-good gesture, the person is saying. Would you like to address that?
That is exactly right. But in reality, when we are to make laws in the national diet, we need the agreement by 2/3 of the members. And there are two strategies. One is to make something with lower hurdle to pass the bill. But even so, we were unable to pass the bill this time. Then the second option is for the citizens to make a choice. Because honestly, in the legislature, when it comes to human rights or anti-discrimination, these terms are very sensational to some of the Diet members. So they feel as if they would become criminals. That's how some of the Diet members think. And there was a human rights protection law. But when some specific problem occurs in Japan, there is no organization to resolve that issue. So the people have not, the majority of people have not been aware of that. So the House of Representatives election in autumn, one of the challenges is to make an equal society. And to this end, the voters will have to show their stance. So in the administration, the judiciary is also important in making the law. So the elective surname option, I was hoping that there will be a ruling that would say that it is unconstitutional to prohibit elective surname system. If it wasn't the case, so it was unfortunate, but in that case, we will have to change the law. So the judiciary and the legislature are both important.
Thank you. And we have a follow-up to that, which is what about at the local level? So maybe, I don't know, Yanagisawa-san or TERAHARA-san, would you like to talk about some of the changes that might be important at local levels?
Yes, I would like to let you know that same-sex partnership system is started in Shibuya ward of Tokyo, and it is kind of spreading across Japan. Importance in terms of the population, 40% of the population has already been covered by those local governments. And the Tokyo metropolitan government is going to start considering that. And then if you consider the population in the Tokyo area, the systems will cover the majority of the population in Japan. So what is happening right now is, if such a system is introduced, businesses and people in local communities will start to create some frameworks and systems to respond to the partnership system. For instance, real estate companies now are trying to convince landlords to let their places to same-sex couples. Hotels and inns, they are changing. The economic sector is changing as well. So what is happening is that, well, even if you introduce same-sex partnership system and they use services in local communities, nothing really changes. I mean, it's actually a benefit because they are gaining more consumers and they have more consumers that are visible. So nothing bad is happening. For instance, there was a ward election in Shibuya ward, and then there were some people who opposed to the partnership system. They said that all of those same-sex couples will move to Shibuya, and then they start to have parties, big parties. They had such concerns. But right now, we know that such concerns, they have no substance. We are all people. We just love, and we just live. That's all. That's so simple. And then that's now recognized in the judicial body, and it's now going to be recognized in the legislative body, I think, in the Diet. So super conservative people, like LDP lawmaker, I actually met with one of them, and then this person said, well, actually, this is such a revelation. I didn't know, this person said. So I think it's very important, such local communities, what they do, And the national diet members, they would recognize such changes so that they will also change their mindset. And if you see a local lawmaker like having a speech in front of the station, please listen to that person. And please let them know that having such a partnership system does not change anything. It just changes in a way that there will be more happy people in your town. That's all.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you know, Terahara-san, we have a question that kind of follows on to this. So let me start with you. And the question is, what kind of support can we give to achieve same-sex marriage? So I think Yanagisawa-san, just exactly what you just said with the local politicians, I think that's good advice. But Terahara-san, would you like to add something to that about how we can actually bring this about?
It's a wonderful question. Thank you for that. There are many things that we can do. First of all, in the national diet, the diet members, well, Otsuji-san does understand this, but there are still some national diet members who don't. So in the local community that they are from, the diet members don't believe that there is no LGBTQI members. So I don't think that they really grasp the current situation. So what I say to them when I face them is that usually diet members come from their own hometown or their electorate where they are elected. But the diet members, if the community members of the area write letters to the diet members, regardless of their sexual identity or gender identity or sexual orientation, both heterosexual and homosexual people can write letters to the diet members. And just as Yanagisawa-san said, this would lead to visualization of LGBTQI plus people, so it will be very empowering. So what's very important and necessary is that the diet members and also the judges and the Supreme Court, these decision makers, will also understand the ideas and awareness of the general public. They will have to understand it. So even today, writing letters can be done by you. So I hope everyone will support that.
Otsuji-san, I see you nodding. Do you want to make a comment on the power of people reaching out to their diet members in their individual districts?
Yes. Whether this is a liberal or a conservative, that doesn't really matter. Voices of the people, local people, that always matters to the diet members. And it's also important to keep confidentiality. That's important because in some local areas, by coming out, and the person will be known as a sexual minority by the family members and the friends. Therefore, the person may not want to do that. Therefore, a confidentiality needs to be kept. So when approaching a diet member locally, you can always talk about the confidentiality. And for election, we always get some questionnaire surveys from like newspapers and the media outlets. And then one of the questions is always to do with whether we are for or against same-sex marriage. So please take a look at that section of the questionnaire survey to see who is against, who is for, and if they are for, what they do in the diet. And if they are for, we can invite these people to give speeches in events by Marriage for All. And if there are some local events, we can invite diet members and to let them give speech so that we can have more supporters. We can expand a group of supporters, a network of supporters. We have many means to do that. So same-sex marriage, there's no cost attached to that, right? And then it makes so many people happy. So that has to happen.
Great, thank you very much. We also got a question that I'd like to go to. It's kind of a long question, but it relates to education, and it relates to gender equality in the schools. And so the questioner is asking to hear your opinion on the possibility of realizing gender equality education at universities and companies for people who have not received that kind of education. So maybe for each of you, I think in each of your different perspectives, what is your perspective on educating people about gender equality? And maybe Yanagisawa-san, why don't we start with you?
Yes. University students, I actually meet university students in the recruitment interviews, and I often ask about inclusion and diversity. I ask them what they think about inclusion and diversity. And I think that in high schools and universities, there are some students who have gone through training, and there are other students who are not very interested in that, and those who have been stuck with similar people. And there is a big gap between these two groups of students. And I do believe that there are diverse people around the world, and in the society, there are people with diverse gender identity and sexual orientation. So to know that is important, but to begin with, having diverse people can be our power and strength, and it is taken for granted that, and it's a matter of course that there are diverse people. And I think that university students should learn that if you only have similar people in the extracurricular activities or in the seminars in the university, they probably wouldn't think about other diverse people. So they should have opportunity to think about that. If all the baseball players are pitchers, then the baseball team cannot win the tournament. So all the different people have different roles, and knowing that people with different perspectives are in the society is very important in education. So the students, if students understand that, then that will lead to their strength in thriving in society.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's great. TERAHARA-san, would you like to add anything to that about education and with youth?
Yes, we have a curriculum, a guidance that determines what is to be taught at school. And as Yanagisawa-san said, gender equality should be a part of that, but it's not the case right now. They become teens, and then they start to kind of get attracted. That is the only thing that is kind of being taught. Gender diversity is not a part of the curriculum. In a textbook, LGBTQ and also same-sex marriage, such a description should increase for not just elementary school, but also junior high school, university. I think that is kind of increasing trend. In the area I live, I'm also a part of the educational committee, and there is a training to young teachers. The curriculum includes LGBTQ, and also we invite lecturers to talk about that topic in front of the school kids. So I think the most important thing is for the curriculum guidance to change, but even now, on the ground, people are trying to come up with different ideas to have this topic included in the educational setting. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Otsuji-san, related to that, if you'd like to make a comment, we have another question, which I'd also maybe like you and Yanagisawa-san to answer, which is it important to come out? Do you feel that coming out is important? And maybe this can relate to the educational part too, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that from the question. And I think this has to be our last question, actually, but thank you.
Yes, then I will begin. So is it important to come out? First of all, not having that option is a problem. So whether the person is in the situation that would allow the person to come out, in order to make that situation, in Japan, we still have some issues. And after a person comes out, we need support system as well. So visualization is very important. When you are visualized, then the problems will surface and people will understand that that is a problem that is only occurring right next to you. But still in Japan, there are discriminations and stereotypes and biases. So how can we support those people who have come out? That also needs to be considered. And at the same time, yes, coming out itself is important as well. In the future, I hope that people will not have to worry about coming out because we have right-handed people, left-handed people, the people who like coffee, people like tea, and there are people who like men or women. And that has to be natural and a matter of course. I think we are at the juncture, we are in the turning point. And there are some members of the local governments and also in the central governments who have already come out. So I hope that it will be something that is taken for granted that people will come out. That's all. From my side, well, coming out is also directly associated to life issue. So if the person thinks it's safe to come out, then I think that the person can come out. But coming out can be done on different levels. For example, maybe you can come out to your closest friends, or maybe you can come out on symposium like this one, this event. So you can come out to your true friends. I think that in order to come out, you need to go through a journey to find the true friends, but it's hard to find true friends. So coming out is something that you will have to think about thoroughly throughout your life. And then when you believe that it's safe to come out, then you can decide to come out. Is it important to come out? Well, yes, it is important from some aspects, but I think that safety in your life is the most important thing. And if you think that you are in a situation that allows you to safely come out, then as Otsuji-san said, you should seek for support from people around you. So we can support you, and there are many groups that can support you as well. When I came out myself, I went to Shinjuku, a second district. I went to a staff member of a bar. This person told me that I could go to the bar anytime to have drinks with the person. So it gave me a relief. So it might be a small relief, but you need to find someone who can support you, and then you can be more relaxed when you think about coming out.
Great, thank you very much. You know, I am not surprised that we have run out of time with so much more still yet to discuss. We received far more questions than we've been able to address today. So if we didn't get to your question, I apologize for that. But One of the things today for each of you, and I thank you very much for your presentations, but it has left me with so much hope and so much excitement for what the future is going to bring. And, I think that sometimes we can get a little bit despondent or a little bit sad when, we look at the progress that they're not making, but knowing that that people like you are working on the issues and really there for these issues and for people and into the future as well, like you're saying. I have so much hope and so much pride, actually, and it's I'm very proud to be part of this panel today with all of you. So thank you very much for participating and for providing us with that. And I think that the future looks really bright given what you all are working on. So let me pass the baton back over to Kelsey, and I'll just say thank you so much for including me today in the event.
Thank you so much, Richard, and thank you all so much for joining us today. What a great discussion with so many questions. So thank you for your active participation. Before we end today's program, we'd like to invite our audience to take a short event survey. You will see the QR code pop up on your screen soon and the link in the chat box. So while you take a moment to answer, I'd like to thank our panelists, Ms. Otsuji, Ms. TERAHARA, and Mr. Yanagisawa. Thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your expertise and your personal experiences with us. And of course, thank you again to Richard for your expert moderation and stewardship of our event. A special thank you as well to our simultaneous interpreters and technicians at NHK and our captioners at UD Talk. Lastly, I'd like to invite you to visit our website and social media for further information on Pride Month and upcoming events and programs promoting greater inclusion, equality, and acceptance for all. We hope to see you at one of those events soon. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you continue to remain safe and healthy, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much.